U.S. digital currency and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials. And the millennial joining me today is, of course, Christopher Hopkins, our producer on the other side of the camera. And, of course, we have with us today Delegate Matt Morgan. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So this podcast is called A U.S. Digital Currency? Really? And we do have a dumbest bill in America, folks. And it is really stupid, almost insulting. You're going to love it. So first up, should the United States of America have a Treasury issued digital currency? Okay, there's a difference, right? We're not talking about just Bitcoin, which we will talk about in this segment, but also what we're really saying is, should there be a crypto-like digital dollar, and should it be issued by the United States Treasury? So in the Wall Street Journal, crypto-like digital dollar is at least several years away, Janet Yellen says. So Washington Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, said the design and development of a digital dollar would likely take years if the United States chose to create one, while outlining the various questions the Biden administration is weighing as it considers ways to make payments faster in the United States. Oh, that's right. They want to make them faster, sure. As part of President Biden's executive order on cryptocurrency, the administration is studying the possibility of issuing a central bank digital currency. In other words, issued by the United States Treasury. Following up on efforts at the Federal Reserve, other countries, including China, have created a central bank digital currency, or CBDC, central bank digital currency, as they try to keep up with the rise of cryptocurrencies, which are not controlled by the central bank. In a speech at American University in Washington on Thursday, Ms. Yellen said the administration's efforts would consider the impact of a CBDC on monetary policy, national security, and international trade, as well as its utility for consumers. Whether Congress would need to authorize the creation of a digital dollar is also an element of the executive order. Of course, Congress would have to authorize it. Quote, I can't tell you yet what conclusions we will reach, but we must be clear that issuing a CBDC, which is a central bank digital currency, would likely present a major design and engineering challenge that would require years of development, not months, Ms. Yellen said. The Fed chairwoman said. So, Matt Morgan, a U.S. issued digital currency. What do you think about that?
That sounds like a terrible idea.
Why?
Well, I thought the point of a digital currency was supposed to be like it was a finite amount of currency. It was supposed to be inflation protection. And, we're talking about the yen. We're talking about the U.S. creating a dollar. Those two governments have really perpetuated inflation. I mean, what are we in debt? Like $30 trillion?
So, but here's my question. What is wrong, and this is where I'm going with this, what is wrong with the digital currency issued by the federal government, U.S. Treasury? What could go wrong with that? What are the dangers of a U.S.?
The goal is to collect every bit of tax revenue that you possibly could. One of the dangers of it, I think, is runaway inflation and
Well, what's the danger? What's the danger of getting rid of actual paper currency? So, podcast listeners, think about this, right? You're paying only digitally with stuff. So it's this thing that's on your Apple Pay, which I have, and millennials like Venmo and Apple Pay. I have Apple Pay, not Venmo, at least not yet. And you pay with Apple Pay, and it's like, okay, I owe you $10 for lunch or $15 for lunch, so I Venmo that to you, or I Apple Pay you that, and that's kind of that's done digitally, right? It's out there in the ethosphere, it's kind of
cloud.
It's out there in the cloud. This money is not really in a bank, so to speak, except Apple's bank, of course, yeah. So they have it, but that is not a digital currency controlled by the U.S. federal government. The problem is that if we don't have $100 bills, $20 bills, $1 bills, and then maybe coinage and so forth, and I can't pay for things that way, and I can only pay for them in a digital way, then can't that digital currency kind of like just disappear?
Or it could just magically appear. out of thin air. I mean, it goes both ways on this.
So here's where I'm going with this, right? So the Chinese have a digital currency. The reason that Chinese have a digital currency, there are a whole lot of reasons. One of the reasons is they want to supplant the US currency, right? And obviously no one's going to trust the yuan, but if the yuan is backed by the dollar, because the Chinese have so many dollars in reserve, then it's a de facto dollar. So that's a danger. Well, in China, they have a social credit score. So if you don't follow what the regime wants, and you only have digital currency and you no longer have paper currency, one day the digital currency just like disappears off of your phone. And you're like, well, wait a minute, I have like no money. And then in normal times, you would go back to your stash of cash under your mattress or somewhere, maybe in your safe, who knows? But you've got a stash of cash and you're like, well, at least I have this cash. But if you have only digital currency, and no one accepts cash anymore because the US Treasury is like, yeah, it's digital only, then the same United States government that is engaging in all this spying of people and the deep state and so forth can also do what? Make your money disappear.
Well, I'm sure it's about control. It's always about control, right? And this is just another threat, digital currency, because they don't control it. I mean, it's troublesome.
I think that's why they want to get rid of the dollar. I mean, and so Ted Cruz, get this, in the Epoch Times, Ted Cruz, Republican senator from Texas, no U.S. federal bank should issue digital currency directly to citizens, Republican senators say. 3 Republican senators are pushing forward legislation that seeks to ban the United States Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency directly to individuals, as it could be used as a financial surveillance tool. The bill aims to amend Section 13 of the Federal Reserve Act by adding the following: no Federal Reserve Bank may offer products or services directly to an individual, maintain an account on behalf of an individual, or issue a central bank digital currency directly to an individual. The bill is introduced by Ted Cruz and sponsored by Senators Chuck Grassley and Mike Braun from Indiana. As countries like China develop CBDCs that do away with privacy benefits of cash, okay, the privacy benefits of cash, which we're going to talk about in a minute, it is more important than ever to make sure that America's digital currency policy protects financial privacy, cultivates innovation, and maintains the dominance of the US dollar, the 3 GOP senators said in their news release. So when you have cash, cash is kind of private, right? Because I can say to you, Matt, I can say, you know, here's $100 because we went out last night to a bar, had a bunch of drinks, and I'm just going to round that up. I'm going to give you $100 because you tipped the waitress and all that stuff. Okay, thanks. Well, no one outside of our circle knows that transaction happened.
It would be closer to 120, but whatever.
Yeah, these days with inflation, it'd be at least $120, especially the way you drink. But the thing is, if it was digital only, not only would the federal government know about this transaction, but the federal government would say, oh, guess what? We found out that because you paid digitally and it's a U.S. issued currency, you're drinking too much, or you drank twice this week. We're going to reduce your social credit score because we think you are a threat to the healthcare system. Well, of course, podcast listeners, certainly the left, those out there, they're going, oh, no, that's not possible. The government would never do that. Really? The same government that shut us down for 2 years and shut down schools and made you wear masks? Oh, they're not going to try to control your healthcare through digital currency?
Look, this is really troublesome because, I mean, you saw it already happen over in Canada about the truckers that were shutting down Ottawa there. And they went through and like GoFundMe, you know.
And what happened? The
government took that. Yeah.
That was digital currency, right? It was, okay, so that was not a government issued digital currency. That was a digital currency that...
But it's still electronic transfers. I mean, they're saying, oh, we got to have this digital currency for your benefit. Well, last time I checked, you can transfer money digitally now.
Yes, you can. And it's through private transactions.
Right. You can file your taxes online. You get your return.
And this is an important
online.
distinction.
Yes.
This is an important distinction because what we're talking about is the Treasury issuing it. Because once the Treasury does that, the Treasury does what? Gets rid of cash.
Well, they also get rid of all their digital currency.
They get rid of all other digital currency. Exactly. There's only one coined digital currency, and that's and also to try to get rid of crypto, which is another thing that we're going to talk about in a minute, which of course you get rid of crypto, then you're going to say, oh, well, you know, we don't want any kind of competition to the US dollar. Yeah, well, here's another problem with that. When you have a government that's spending too much money and literally causing inflation, right? Inflation that is going through the roof for the first time in what? Since 1982?
It's the highest in 40 years.
So you have that, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, I don't trust the US dollar, so why can't I do my own currency? Excuse me. Why can't I do that? Why can't I use some other kind of means of paying for things? That's why they want to do it. But it's the abuse that can happen as a result. Currently, we have digital currency through private transactions, as you said. But the federal government doesn't like that because they think that they're going to lose control and they can no longer print money.
Well, and earlier you saw it was in a bill, or they made some news reports about 6 months ago where it's anything would trigger more than $600 into your private bank account would set a flag. I think right now in cash, it's
and that was because of Venmo and Apple Pay.
Yeah.
Primarily because of Venmo and Apple Pay, because people were like paying each other back and forth for stuff. It's like,
you mean commerce?
Yeah.
like
exactly. Yeah. Well,
we got to get in the way of this.
Yeah,
I mean,
we need to track that because that, they're paying each other. Like I paid someone the other day. It was raining outside like crazy, right? And so we were all dressed in suits and ties and so forth. So we had to walk over to a courthouse. And so it started raining. And one of the guys said, hey, look, I'm going to get everybody an umbrella. Just Venmo me or Apple Pay me. So it was only $14, right? So I did that. I Apple paid him $14. It's like, what? Why would the federal government care that I gave this guy $14? Are they going to say, oh, you made $14. You need to report that as income, which of course it's not income because I was just reimbursing them for it, which is generally speaking what Apple Pay and Venmo are, right? I mean, unless you provide a service, in which case it's not, because then you're providing a service and then Apple Pay and Venmo, you get paid by it. And they're like, well, we want our sales tax money or we want our income tax because you're getting paid.
It just really cracks me up, Mark, that these are the same people that also say, you know what? We can't show a voter ID because everyone can't possibly get an ID. They're perpetually stuck in the 1950s.
Of course
but they expect everyone to deal with a digital currency.
So, Chris, what were you going to say? You had something on this, the digital currency, the Venmo and all that, Apple Pay?
Oh, I was just saying that the whole purpose of Venmo and Apple Pay and all that stuff was just to make transactions easier in the 21st century.
So you didn't have to carry cash.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I get, right? But the thing, and this is why this conversation is so good, because millennials are like, I don't need to carry cash. I can just Venmo you and I can just email you. And I've got, everything's tied to my Apple Wallet. Everything's good with that. And what we're saying is the danger here is not those private transactions, which are peer-to-peer. The danger is when the US government, which is what we're talking about, is actually trying to issue a digital currency to put everybody out of business and then say, this is the only way it can happen because otherwise it's not a verified dollar. And it's like, yeah, it is. Yeah,
well, the government's just trying to get in the way. I mean, our millennials like Chris over here dealing with Venmo and Apple Pay. I mean, that's a good thing. You want transactions. I mean, that's commerce there. And the government just wants their cut like normal.
Yeah.
And they would never have the foresight to actually create an app like this. I mean, this came about because you were trying to make people's lives easier. They make commerce easier. And now it's actually successful. They're trying to get in the way of it.
And so I do think that the government is trying to do this solely for purposes of collections and so forth, because the government is printing so much money. It needs to make sure it can tax every little transaction that there is out there to sustain the spending. But what we're saying is what can go wrong with this? And I'm saying everything can go wrong with it.
You mean your pay would be tied to your Twitter feed?
Your pay would be tied to your Twitter feed. Your pay would be tied to your lifestyle, so you go out and you buy a cigar and you smoke a cigar. Oh, wait a minute, that triggers a higher tax because, you just smoked a cigar and, or you smoked a cigar. So you probably are a Republican, because Democrats, I'm sure, don't smoke cigars. They probably smoke weed. Yeah, that's, yeah. Yeah, or Hunter Biden, of course, his crack is his choice.
Preferred.
That's his preferred drug. So China's also in the Epoch Times. China's digital yuan, the biggest threat to the West, is overshadowed by Russian war, Kyle Bass warns. So Russia's war in the Ukraine is obscuring one very alarming threat posed by the Chinese regime. Its system of paperless money in China, warned hedge fund manager Kyle Bass. Quote, "It is, I think, the single largest threat to the West in the last 50 years. And it's being overshadowed by the Russian invasion of Ukraine," Bass said during a recent interview on Epic TV's America's Thought Leaders program. The Chinese digital currency, variously known as the digital yuan, digital renminbi, ECYN, and E-yuan, is currently being developed by the Chinese regime through its central bank. Since the E-yuan is backed by the People's Bank of China, PBOC, it is a central bank digital currency, or simply the digital version of China's fiat currency. And so, folks, the danger here is, and this is where the US government is coming from on this particular matter, is the government saying, well, wait a minute. If China beats the US government to a reliable digital currency, then maybe people across the planet will just pay using the Chinese currency because it's just so much more convenient, since millennials like to pay that way for stuff. And millennials are like, well, what do I care? What do I care whether I use the Chinese yuan or the renminbi or whatever the heck it's called versus the dollar? What do I care? Because it's convenient. That's all that really matters to me. And that's the danger here. So interestingly enough, on the one hand, it's like, okay, I understand why the US government has some concerns over this, because we don't want the dollar to be replaced by the CCP's currency. But on the other hand, I'm concerned that the US would become the CCP if it did this, because it's already on its way anyway.
Right. No government should have control over this. I do like that in this story, it talks about this isn't simply a digital payment app. It tracks where you're at, what your name, your social security number, and all your unique identifiers, including your geocache location. And then it goes on to say, imagine the Chinese government had access to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in America. Imagine if they could cross-run an algorithm that says, let's look for U.S. government employees that have, let's say, a Tinder application.
Oh, a Tinder application.
Right.
Not a tender application.
A Tinder. And then let's say they're short on cash, and maybe they're married, and maybe they're corruptible.
There you go. That's elite capture there. That's how they get elite capture, because they use the honeypot, and so that's very, very dangerous. But the Chinese have made this into an art form.
I mean, it worked with Eric Swalwell.
Yes. Yes. Eric Swallowswell has been very busy, that's for sure. And also in the Wall Street Journal, cutting edge crypto coins tout stability. Critics call them dangerous. Algorithmic stablecoins that use financial engineering to link their value to the dollar have surged in popularity. It's a new breed of cryptocurrencies, and it's seeking to replicate the stability of the dollar, but critics say they are a disaster waiting to happen. So once again, I'm not going to read this whole article, but let's just put it this way. We have all these new currencies that are coming out, crypto and otherwise, and NFTs, different ways of paying for things. And the purpose of them is because people are losing confidence in the dollar. People are losing confidence in their government. People don't trust government with the spending and with the fiat currency that's out there. And from a baby boomer standpoint, my big concern is, as I said before, that millennials just don't care about this stuff. What they care about is convenience on the one hand. On the other hand, one of the things I admire about millennials is they want decentralized currency because they don't trust the government. I love that aspect of millennials. I think that's brilliant. What I'm hoping that they do is they transfer that skepticism to the Chinese digital currency and say, well, I don't want any digital currency controlling the world. And that would be a good thing.
I think it would be a good thing if there is a skepticism. I know when I talk to my son, and maybe Chris, you want to weigh in on this. I think there's a theory among millennials out there that, so much of our private identity or digital identity is already taken. It's already used. We willingly gave it away to companies like Amazon and
Google and Facebook
and
Instagram.
Yeah, they're just
TikTok.
And it's just like, well, they're going to spy on us. We know that. We accepted it, and they've kind of moved on. But spying on you is one thing. They're obviously doing it for ad revenue and such. But really, they're looking at from a control perspective going forward.
No doubt. And I mean, we see it already, right? We see with Elon Musk, he is a very wealthy man, the world's wealthiest man. He wants to buy Twitter. And obviously, we all know this. It's all over the news. And so what's happening now? Well, now the U.S. government is trying to crack down on Elon Musk's other business enterprises. and as well as Elon Musk himself on all of his transactions, his business transactions, saying, oh no, he's a bad guy now. Well, imagine if there were a digital currency and he's the world's richest man and that digital currency starts to disappear.
Yeah.
And I know what you're saying. Oh no, that could never happen because really?
Happened in Cuba.
Imagine if you're
Happened
digital
in Venezuela.
You want to know why you would get on your knees and beg for forgiveness to government is because then you can't go buy food. If all you have is digital currency and it's taken away from you and you go to the local grocery store, there's no money. They're not going to take cash because they're sorry, sir. The cash is like, we stopped that like 10 years ago. That's like last century. And you're like, well, can I barter? No. So now you're really becoming a criminal because now you have to go steal the food because they've canceled. See, I know when you talk this through and you realize it's a possibility and you see them attacking someone like the federal government, the apparatchiks in the federal government attacking a guy who's trying to improve free speech and conversations in the United States of America. And he's an immigrant, a legal immigrant, and trying to fix things. And they're like, oh, we're just going to cancel your money.
Remember the movie Hunger Games?
Yes.
Where they had like District 12 and they were like timber people.
They were the
miners.
rebels.
Yeah. And then each district had its little like farming district, but it all surrounded like the capital.
Yeah. The capital were the elites and everybody else were the workers.
Yeah. Right. I always thought that was like a futuristic movie. I didn't know it was a roadmap.
It's a Democrat roadmap, you know? If you live on the coast and you're a lib, you're like, you know, you live in the capital city, but everybody lives in the interior of the country. That's like District 12.
Yeah, you got to take your metro.
Exactly. So next up, podcast listeners, campaign cash for family members. This is a real problem in the United States of America. Corrupt Democrats double down on campaign cash for family members. I do want to make this clear, by the way. We're going to talk about Democrats here, but I know that there are Republicans that do this as well, for sure. So Maxine Waters, a Democrat congressman from California, and Ilhan Omar, Democrat of Minnesota, have continued to pay their relatives tens of thousands of dollars in campaign cash despite concerns from ethical experts. This past quarter, Maxine Waters' campaign paid her daughter, Karen Waters, who organizes slate mailing operations, which are campaign mailings, for her mom and her company, Progressive Connections. Maxine Waters paid her daughter $24,000 to do that out of Maxine Waters' campaign contributions. And Waters' campaign funneled $250,000 to her daughter since 2003. And Karen has made more than $1 million altogether from her mother. This same thing has happened across the board, and you hear people saying this should not be allowed and so forth. Look, this article is certainly dedicated to going after Maxine Waters and Ilhan Omar, who's done the same thing. I think she's paid her boyfriend or something like that, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's how it works. So you have a fundraiser and you're elected official or you're running for something. People give money to your campaign. And then the first thing you do is you decide that you're going to hire a relative from those funds to do stuff. Next thing you know, your relative's getting, fabulously wealthy off of these campaign donations. Very, very, very dangerous. As I said, Republicans and Democrats, have been caught doing this. Apparently, it's not illegal. It's not illegal because I guess the theory is, well, if someone is really good at something, you should be able to pay them. I think that's true. But it's clearly not ethical to pay.
It's definitely steering.
It's steering. Yes, you're giving money to your relative. It's wrong.
But look, if you grew up in some socialistic, corrupt country,
like the United States, yeah.
Well, now I'm thinking like a small warlord nation in Africa.
All right.
If you're a young up and coming person, you go into government because you can make the most amount of money in government.
For sure.
Well, in the United States, you went into business because you can make the most amount of money and live the higher lifestyle.
Yes.
If you focused on actually producing a product and providing a service that actually helped others. As the United States goes a little bit more and more towards this socialism, it seems like these stories are keep coming up more and more.
Oh, for sure.
You look at the Clinton Foundation.
Yes.
You look at all the stuff that's went on with Hunter Biden, and these are high profile cases. And now you see it with Maxine Waters. We've seen it locally in our area with Marilyn Mosby of the,
Marilyn Mosby is what? She's in
the
Baltimore.
state's attorney,
she's the state's attorney of Baltimore.
Right.
And she's basically enriched herself with all kinds of stuff.
And she's under indictment by the FBI. So it's so funny,
it's a problem. It is a big problem because, some of these campaigns, especially at the city level, like Marilyn Mosby, but also United States senators, United States congressmen. I mean, they are intaking millions of dollars of contributions over any given 2-year cycle or 4-year cycle. In some cases, $10 million. And I'm sure that, if you're someone who's never really managed anything of any kind of size, and suddenly you have control over this war chest, and you can say, well, why don't I just hire my child at $150,000 a year as my campaign manager? And it's like, then they're on the payroll forever.
It's like that CCR song, Clear. I'm a fortunate son. I'm no senator's son.
I'm no senator's son.
I mean, because it's that good once you are one, apparently.
It's kind of like Hunter Biden, basically. He's done the same thing, except that instead of actually being on the campaign, although who knows, Hunter Biden was probably also on the campaign payroll. But in addition to that, of course, he's decided to just use that same kind of access for his father.
It's cronyism.
It is cronyism. It's wrong. But the thing is, podcast listeners, and I want to make this really clear. There are Republicans that do this. There are Democrats that do this. We're picking on these two Democrats because most people know them as completely, sleazy Maxine Waters.
And let's face it, they're the party in charge right now.
They are.
And it's easier to do this when you're in charge.
Because people want to give to the party in charge because that's the party that can get things done because they have the votes. Of course, naturally. That's the way it works at all levels of government because it is a democracy and there are benefits to winning. So next up, podcast listeners, a trans doctor who helps teens transition says it's gone too far now. A transgender psychologist, and this is in the New York Post, who has helped hundreds of thousands of teens, only hundreds of teens, transition, has warned that it has gone too far and fears many are making life-changing decisions because it's trendy and pushed on social media. I mean, gee, what an epiphany. Erica Anderson, who's 71 years old, who is transgender herself, himself, told the Los Angeles Times that she is horrified that even 13-year-old kids are now getting hormone treatment without even meeting with psychologists. I think it's gone too far, said Anderson, who recently led the U.S. Professional Society at the forefront of transgender care. Quote, for a while, we were all happy that society is becoming more accepting and more families than ever were embracing children that were gender variant. Gender variant. What the hell does that mean? Now it's gone to the point where there are kids presenting at clinics whose parents say, this just doesn't make sense, she said. Yeah, well, I think we all know that it doesn't make sense because they're 13-year-olds and what can that mean? But what's interesting is now you finally have someone who has a conscience, who themselves is a transgender adult, but now they're saying maybe all this stuff that I did was incredibly wrong.
Well, it has to be incredibly wrong. I mean, as a society, we want to be like loving and caring and accepting of all, but this has gone too far. It's become a point where I think it's fashionable, and now you have parents actually just pushing. And
school, school systems are pushing, I think.
School systems are pushing, activists are pushing.
I think there are some
Disney's
very,
pushing.
very, very few parents are pushing this. I think what's happening is the kids are coming home and next thing you know, they're dressing in different ways or what have you. And parents are like, what is going on? And what they don't know is what's happening in the classroom.
I don't honestly see biology, how can you make these decisions before a child's even gone through puberty? I mean, the same people that were like, you know what, we got to put organic apples in the kids' lunches because we can't be trusted with pesticide are apparently okay giving teenagers hormone blockers without any longitudinal study. I mean, what's the long-term effects of that?
Yeah, the long-term effect of that can't be good. And then, well, here's one of the long-term effects, podcast listeners, also in the New York Post. A New Jersey woman's prison inmate, pregnant, she's pregnant after sex with a transgender prisoner. So a New Jersey woman's prison inmates, like several of them, have now become pregnant after they've had sex with transgender prisoners. So when we say what can go wrong, obviously with children, that's one thing. But now we have a situation where, it's like a science experiment inside of prisons. So 2 inmates serving time in New Jersey's only state prison for women became pregnant after they had sex with transgender inmates, according to a report Wednesday. The unidentified jailbirds became pregnant at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility after engaging in consensual sexual relationships with another incarcerated person, the State Department of Corrections. So I'm just curious. When you're a guy and you're transgender, so you become a woman, and then you go into a woman's prison where they're all like biological women, and then you
can compete in swimming contests and weightlifting contests and everything as a woman.
True. So then you have sex with a woman at the all-women's prison. Does that make you a lesbian now?
Maybe.
Because it's a guy, so he's got her. Go ahead.
Does the other woman, like at any point along the way, go, well, you're not a woman.
You're right. Like, exactly.
Like,
but it was consensual.
You don't think they knew?
It was consensual.
Do you think they realized at any point along the way that's like, this is not what I thought?
It was consensual sex too with the prison.
Right.
So a dude says he's a woman, then goes to an all-female prison, and then I guess becomes a lesbian, but then gets the other women pregnant.
You want to make a bet the guy was actually in jail?
He's probably not really a transgender. That's what we're going at here.
Yeah, he's probably not really
he's probably a predator who wants to go into an all-female prison. He's probably in there for
some type of sexual assault.
Yes, exactly. Right.
And he's just outsmarted the woke. What gets me is the correction facilities were like, we told you this is going to happen. Yeah, even in our own state. Yeah, I mean, we had this debate 2 or 3 years ago, and we're like, this doesn't really meet reality. But they don't live in reality.
No, they don't. And the thing is you're right, Matt. It's like the guards are probably like, as you said, they're like, this is a terrible idea. Why would you ever do this to us? You're putting us in harm's way, and you're putting all of the women that are in this, the biological women that are in this facility in harm's way as well.
That's a great point, Mark. Where are the feminists in this argument here?
Oh, right.
I mean, I thought we were supposed to be protecting women.
Well, they don't. Yeah, they don't even know what a woman is anymore.
Right. They can't define it.
They can't define it. So the 2 inmates serving time in New Jersey's only state prison for women became pregnant after they had sex with a transgender inmate, according to a report Wednesday.
So conversion therapy does work.
So the identified jailbirds became pregnant at the. Okay, I said that part, and then okay, yeah. So this is just ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I don't know how anyone in their right mind. And so the thing is here we are outside in the real world, in America, and we're living our lives and we don't know what's happening in prisons. But I think it's important to report this because, if you have a child that had a very bad upbringing and they, it was a broken family and your child broke the law and did something bad, and which is terrible, and they should serve time. They do serve time and they're in a prison. And next thing you know, they've got like dudes coming in.
Well, we make fun of this because we know he gets under the left skin. And look, you have to kind of make fun of it for people to pay attention. But look, behind this is a really tragic policy. I mean, you have women being abused. We've seen story after story of this.
How about the poor baby?
Well, I know.
How about the baby, folks? I'm sorry. You should not be having babies in prison, okay? Part of the price that you pay for being in prison is that you do not have children in prison. I mean, talk about messing up the children. It's like, so Mom, tell me about Dad. Well, Jane and I met in prison.
Who's Dad?
Cindy and I met in prison. Yeah, well, where's Cindy? Well, Cindy's still in prison. So
what gets me is, I think the article says, what is it, 20-some transgenders in this prison, which isn't very much. Is this from the same prisoners or this multiple? Because now you're looking at 10%. I mean, that seems pretty high.
Exactly. So, and then talk about transgenderism gone too far. A transgender rugby player slams a female athlete. The coach says 3 were injured. So a high school rugby league is under fire after a transgender female athlete allegedly injured 3 biological female players during a Saturday match. A biological male identifying and playing as a female on Guam High School's rugby team injured 3 biological female players from Tian High School during Saturday's season opening match, according to a Tian High School head coach, Conrad Kerber. The transgender's athletes' body size, body strength completely dominate any girl that I have on my team, Kerber said, according to a report. The aggressive nature that was witnessed clearly showed that it's a definite issue that we have to deal with, he added. I have 3 players that were injured in that first game against Guam High directly by that particular player. And so we're not going to play this, but they have, like a video of it where this dude is just like crushing women in rugby. And what kind of person would want to, rugby,
Well, I think it's a girls' rugby team. They come out here and play. And I don't know. It's up to them. They wanted to do that. But if you're a female athlete, they're taking this right away from you. This is just like, we've seen it in non-contact sports where males coming and they just absolutely dominate because there's about 10,000 years of data behind this.
that men are just like
bigger, stronger, faster than women.
Yes, naturally that way.
It's just,
but of course, the left is going to say, not all men. It's like, okay, so you found 2. All right.
Right. Well, not all men. You're making a generality, but I think it was on
the
Babylon B. It's interesting.
Certainly the ones that want to play sports tend to be very athletic.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and to be fair, so do some of the women. They're very athletic.
They are athletic.
It's an athletic sport.
But they're athletic.
But guys
for women.
are still bigger, faster, and stronger. And it's so ironic that, for a party and people have said, we need to follow the science. Everyone from high school to NCAA's bans performance-enhancing drugs. And I think it was the Babylon B that had performance-enhancing testicles.
from Leah Thomas, the NCAA winner.
So
she's quite the winner, that Leah Thomas. I know exactly.
Testicles on rugby players. Maybe they shouldn't be playing in the same girls' league.
And it's so podcast listeners, we have to talk about this on Mark the Millennials because no one talks about this. All right, by no one I mean everybody's afraid. Like politicians are afraid to talk about this. Parents are afraid to talk about this. The only people that apparently are allowed to talk about these kinds of subjects are kindergarten teachers to your child, right? But like everybody else is afraid. And that's why we're doing this, because we're taking it on head on because somebody has to.
But again, where are the people standing up for the women? I'm happy this coach brought it up to attention. This is a problem. Sure. Because he's sitting there looking at 3 injured people that probably won't continue to play. Exactly. And they could be, let's say, they could get really hurt.
And most definitely. So next up, we have the daily Biden dumpster fire. That's right, the daily Biden dumpster fire. And you won't believe it. Joe Biden, the president of the United States, claims that he was a professor. So President Joe Biden told an audience in North Carolina on Thursday of last week that he was a full professor for 4 years at the University of Pennsylvania, a claim that has no evidence to support it. Biden shared the remarks during a speech at the A&T State University in Greensboro that focused on his Build Back Better agenda. So as you can imagine, good old Joe Biden is in front of a local college or university, not particularly well-known school, but a school nonetheless. And I guess he's assuming that everybody in the audience is as dumb as he is and is not going to check up on whether he actually taught, of all places, at the University of Pennsylvania. Nonetheless, he did it. And we have a clip on this to prove it, and here it is.
I've been on a lot of university campuses. Matter of fact, for 4 years, I was a full professor at the University of Pennsylvania.
So, as a matter of fact, I was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Can we play that again? I just want to hear this again. Let's hear it.
I've been on a lot of university campuses. Matter of fact, for 4 years, I was a full professor at the University of Pennsylvania.
At the University of Pennsylvania. Yeah, right, Joe. Okay, so any normally functioning media, would be all over this, especially if it were Republican. It would be all over the media. Everybody would be reporting this. It's like, what is wrong with a guy who openly lies about things that are so not true? Like when he said that he was
a truck driver.
He was a truck
driver about 6 months ago.
He drove an 18-wheeler.
And I think at one time he was a minor as well.
He was a minor. That's right.
I mean, do you think he's just that far gone mentally? Or do you think it's he was a politician in an era before the internet existed, that he was just so used to telling these fabricated stories that were just not really easy to look up?
That's what it is. I actually think that's exactly what it is, Matt.
I kind of think it is too. Like he grew up in the era. He's been a like
good point.
He's been involved in Washington politics since literally before I was born,
and it worked for decades,
right?
Because there was no fact checking through the internet and so forth.
Now you can do it from your phone. It takes about 5 seconds.
Exactly.
And he's just so used to bloviating to build himself up that he's just, you know. But I mean, is this on teleprompter, or like the people writing this, or he just pops in his head?
He's just ad libs this. I'm certain of it. You know, he's just ad libbing it. And he's just going, yeah, well, you know, as a matter of fact,
play up to the crowd.
Because, you know, you would think that being president of the United States, speaking in front of an audience, would be sufficient in terms of your credentials. You're president of the United States. But he thinks so lowly of himself, or so great of himself, that he constantly has to like even puff it up more.
It reminds me of that one scene from the campaign where at the beginning where he's going around meeting with all these people. And by the end of it, he's like, carnival workers are the backbone of America.
And maybe he should get in front of an audience in the New Jersey prison system, as we're talking about earlier, and say, as a matter of fact, I was also a trans inmate as well. And I also got a woman pregnant because, you know, that's... and they're like, yeah.
I'm surprised he went through the whole Olympics without saying he actually competed.
Well, and that is Joe Biden. I mean, everything that he does. And why do we not have reporting in the media that makes it possible to dethrone this guy, for people to actually see who he is, that he's a phony, that he's a liar?
You gotta look on the bright side, Mark. If we actually had legitimate reporting by the media, we couldn't do a show like this.
Well, I mean, yeah, we wouldn't have a show.
I mean,
for sure.
Literally, we could do 3 shows a week for 3 hours a day because
just on the daily Biden dumpster fire.
Right. I mean, it's like it's so much content they provide us.
So much content, so little time. Next up, podcast listeners, we have the dumbest bill in America. And do we have a lead up, Mr. Producer? Here it is.
Dum 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 dum.
And it's the dumbest bill in America, and it is, you won't believe it, transgender UBI in Palm Springs, California. Transgender universal basic income in Palm Springs, California. I never thought I would come to this day that I would actually be able to even talk about this, that this was a possibility, but in NPR, Palm Springs looks to create a universal basic income pilot for trans residents. The Palm Springs City Council has approved funding for 2 local organizations to develop a universal basic income program for the California city's transgender and non-binary residents. The city council unanimously approved allocating $200,000 to 2 groups, if you will. One's called DAP Health and one is called QueerWorks. And and the money's purpose is to do a no strings attached universal basic income program, which means that you get a check for doing nothing, right? So initially, universal basic income's idea was, well, you need some money so that you can buy food and clothing and maybe help you with your rent so that you can get transition to the next job. But now it's, here's some money so that you can get transition to the next sex. I mean, I'm not really sure. Apparently that's what it is. So it's transgender UBI. So apparently what has happened since this bill passed, okay, in Palm Springs, California. Since it passed, the mayor of Palm Springs, California, we're going to put a picture of her up, okay? The mayor's name is Lisa Middleton. Now, I was looking at Lisa Middleton for a while, the picture in the article, and I realized Lisa has a really large Adam's apple. And I'm like, that's got to be a guy, but it just looks like an older, you know, kind of unattractive woman. Well, the mayor of Palm Springs, California is getting a lot of criticism about this UBI stuff. So the article in the Desert Sun It's a local newspaper. It says, Middleton decries animus abuse in wake of Palm Springs transgender income pilot vote. Palm Springs Mayor Lisa Middleton on Thursday said city staff have been subjected to a wave of abuse by people upset over a recent city council decision to allocate $200,000 to local organizations to design a guaranteed basic income pilot program for transgender city residents. That's a mouthful.
That's what she said.
At comments at the end of Thursday's city council meeting, Middleton, who is transgender, the mayor is transgender, expressed dismay over what she said has been inaccurate national media coverage of the vote. She said, vitriol directed at city staff is the result of hostility towards transgender community. No, people are upset with the mayor and the city council because of the fact that they're giving money away based solely on the fact that you decide that you're going to be some other sex. On March 24th, the council voted unanimously to provide $200,000 to QueerWorks and DAP Health. Leaders of those two organizations told the council. So, folks, we have a clip, okay? It's really funny. And the purpose of this, letting you listen to this clip is that this is someone who's explaining this program, saying it's really not universal basic income. All it is a program to set up universal basic income. So we're not giving it away yet. We're just setting up the program that will enable it to be given away. I mean, the biggest lie ever. It tells you how the left will do anything to lie. So here's Ryan Mitchell. He's a podcaster in Palm Springs, California. Ryan Mitchell is a big supporter of transgender UBI. We have this clip, and here it is.
The $200,000 is to allow DAP Health and QueerWorks to develop the application, to do focus groups, to research best practices, to attempt to hire individuals that would be responsible for putting together the program and for messaging to the community. They are proposing that it would be $900 that would go to a target population of transgender and non-binary individuals. The city of Palm Springs is providing $200,000 to help in the application process. We did not commit to providing any additional funding. We did not commit to moving forward with being a UBI management organization.
So, Matt, that's a guy explaining away the fact that they're not really doing UBI. They're just setting up all the infrastructure to do UBI for transgenders. So here's my thought process. I'm going to walk you through this. So you got a Hispanic guy. He's in Palm Springs, California. He works at a gardening center. And he decides to go to the local UBI office for universal basic income in Palm Springs, California. He has 3 kids. He's married, traditional marriage. And he walks in there like, you don't get $1,000 UBI.
No.
Are you crazy? Not you.
No, you're too normal.
He says, well, I kind of need it because I want to get an education because I want to be a landscape architect. I don't want to be just a landscaper. I want to be a landscape architect, and that's going to help me with my degree at the local community college. No, you don't get that. So then he goes home, thinks about it, regroups, comes back the next day in a wig and says, hi, I'm here to apply for, why didn't you say so? Here's $1,000.
Approved. Approved.
It's right.
Rubber stamped it.
Chris is back there going, approved. Wig proves that you are actually a transgender. Speaking of transgenders, one just walked by. So go ahead.
I mean, these people are crazy. I mean, there's just no other way to phrase it. They've lost their mind. And what gets me, I guess the theory of this is just cracking me up from if you're a resident out there in Palm Springs. Apparently, your political class thinks you're so homophobic, right? So I guess the theory is that the income or the employment rate between transgenders and cisgenders, which is normal people, it's so the gap is so wide.
A new word for normal.
Yeah, that we need to go ahead and take from one group to give to another group in the name of equity.
So here's my thing. Okay, Howard explained the Hispanic guy who wants to UBI and he just puts a wig on. But
Like Klinger.
isn't there this principle that I was aware of, at least I thought I was aware of, that said that when there is assistance that is required because you don't have enough food or you need shelter or what have you, that government is supposed to be colorblind. I mean, that's like a uniquely American system. You're supposed to be like blind to need and just help people based on
in front
need.
of the courthouse.
But this is not what this is. This is the opposite. This has nothing to do with need. This is blind to need and eyes open based on the way you look, literally.
It's not even the way you look. It's the body parts that you have. I mean, this isn't for LGBT.
No, it's the way you.
It's just
the way
for
you
the T, right?
It's the way you display your body part. It's it's transgender UBI. I mean, it says here transgender UBI in Palm Springs, California. So as long as you identify as,
So
something other than
if
you're
just gay or lesbian, you can't qualify for this.
I don't think so. I think this is pure transgender. So, and then Lisa Middleton, folks.
So they're a higher protected class than even anybody else.
So the most protected class in America, right? I mean, it used to be the illegal gardener, right? That lives there and now he's like, well, wait a minute, what about me? Like, I came here illegally. I'm first. Like, no, dude, the transgender gets in line before you
You're
do.
privileged.
Come on,
You're privileged.
exactly. So Lisa Middleton, folks, she's the mayor of Palm Springs, California. So I decided to look her up.
Ugly woman.
She is really ugly. She's ugly. So Lisa Middleton, I looked her up on Wikipedia because I just had a hunch. Born in 1952, is an American politician and a member of Palm Springs City Council. Well, she's the mayor now. She was first elected in the city council in 2017 and is the first transgender person to be elected in California for a non-judicial position. She also serves on the Riverside County Transportation Commission, the Sunline Board of Directors, and blah, 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 blah. So there you go. Only in Wikipedia would you first be that, right? You're the mayor, you were on the city council, and you're a transgender yourself. So naturally, you have to have some sort of thing for the people that put you in office. I presume. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a self-directed retirement plan. Like her term's almost up, so maybe just need to railroad this.
So we're going to do this again. We did this the other day. So UBI, we need some new UBI ideas. So universal basic income is just money you get on a monthly basis, just because. Okay, because the idea is you really need this to get you by. You just get it. No justification, no litmus test, no nothing other than with this, you have to be a transgender. So let's do the next UBI program. So UBI for what?
I don't know.
UBI for.
I mean, it's got to be somebody close.
Single women with cats.
I mean,
UBI for
blind Eskimos. Maybe
UBI for.
I'm trying to think of. So I mean, this is all getting back to intersectionality from the.
It
left,
is intersectionality,
right? And
yes.
where conservatives like ourselves treat everyone equally. Right. This gets back to equity. And equity means different rules for different people.
They don't believe you treat people equally because you're a conservative. They believe that
I treat people equally.
They believe you're not treating transgenders equally, and that's why they deserve UBI because you're a conservative.
People,
How dare you?
As Thomas Sowell has said, if they had special treatment for so long, now they're receiving equal treatment, they actually feel like they've been discriminated against.
Does this piss off millennials, Chris? I just want to know. Do millennials get upset the fact that this dude over here gets UBI because he's.
It pisses me off. I don't think it pisses off a lot of them.
I think it really comes down to if you're working or not. If you're working in a taxpayer and realize that your money is going to some dude or dudette or whoever it is that's simply not working, how is that fair? I don't know a single person that doesn't support equality, meaning equal rules for everyone.
Equal rules, yes. Okay.
Equity is different rules for different people.
That's what this is.
And this is different people getting an extra benefit.
Yes.
Based on their sexuality that they choose. And this isn't even really sexuality because, as you said, there's more than one way you can. I mean,
it's the way you're dressed.
How do you verify? What's the certification process for this?
Well, it's just like in New Jersey where you have the guys that dressed up as women, went into a women's prison, and then made several women pregnant. in New Jersey. And it's like, well, then it's obviously still a dude, right? Because he loves, so it's not a transgender.
You got in Virginia schools. We kept getting moved around to all the different schools.
Well,
Yes.
right. I mean, and
He
we were
was
going to hit
assaulting,
that.
and he was assaulting women, young girls, excuse me.
In the bathroom, and that just gets swept under the rug.
Exactly. So how is that? I'm not sure. Help me out with this. Help me understand this.
I don't think anybody understands this right now. This is about, I think the left, radical left, is just trying to undermine society at this point, because there's no way this doesn't meet like meritocracy.
Yeah, well, this is, I just think that California, anything that they can think of that's crazy that they just put into law, and it's just, it's not even just for the shock value. It's because when you look at these people,
Oh, it's
and you
not
listen
shock
to them,
value. They believe
it.
this.
They believe it.
They do.
And so, the next thing they're going to have is UBI for probably immigrants, right? Illegal immigrants, illegal UBI, right? Come into this country and we're going to give you $1,000 a month because you came here illegally.
Well, listeners out there on our podcast, I go do a little homework.
By the way, that would be a good amendment, right?
Well, I think they should.
So if Jose is illegal and he puts a wig on, does he still get the $1,000?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure he does too.
Well, I think this would be a good study course. Anybody wanting a homework assignment, go out there and check and see how much is available for a student that is just Latino, born here, American citizen, versus someone that came here illegally. And you'd be shocked at the amount of grant programs, scholarships available for the people here illegally.
Yep. And coming soon to you, transgender UBI. And that's the dumbest bill in America. And that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining us with Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins, and our guest, Delegate Matt Morgan. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, Truth Social, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.